You've got a consultant interview, and an email arrives saying that your interview will start with a 10-minute presentation or a 5-minute presentation, and they email you a topic. There's a wide range of topics, some of which we'll talk about today. What I think a lot of candidates do is they first open up PowerPoint. And that's probably the wrong place to start, probably the worst place to start, because the panel isn't interviewing your PowerPoint or your PowerPoint skills. They are interviewing you. And in this episode, I will try and take you through a few tips on how to make this presentation and how to make it stand out. Basically, a bit about how to structure it, what should go on the slide, what I think shouldn't, how you deliver it. So, why do panels ask for a presentation? Well, they are common parts of a consultant interview. You usually get given a topic in advance, and you are expected to research for it and read about it. They're not, like I said, not a test of your PowerPoint skills. They're looking out for things like, can you communicate? And they're often quite broad topics, and they're deliberately broad topics because they want to see that in that broad topic, what are the things that you've picked up that you think are important? Can you stand your ground, make an argument, explain why you thought that particular aspect was important, why the other aspects weren't important? And can you express an opinion and engage the room? So basically, do you sound like a future consultant colleague who could work at that organization? And it's done fairly early on in the interview. Often the first thing that your interview will begin with, if you have been asked to make a presentation. And again, the reason for that is that it's an icebreaker. It's an icebreaker to get the candidate to start speaking about something they've had an opportunity to think about, to prep in advance, and basically get your juices flowing. So settle your nerves a little bit. Now, before we go any further, a quick one. This channel, Beyond CCT, is about preparing for consultant interviews and your transition from being a registrar to a consultant. And it would help me immensely, and maybe other registrars and your colleagues, if you could give this a like, and maybe even follow or subscribe if you're watching on Spotify or YouTube. So coming back to the interviews, the presentations in interviews, I've prepared a mock presentation just to highlight some of the things that should and shouldn't go onto these interviews. And let's begin with an example of what I think is a particularly bad slide. We've all interviewed, so we've all presented these kind of slides. We've seen other people present these slides where the slide is extremely busy. You heard that term before, very busy slide. And often people will begin by saying, oh, I apologize for the busy slide. Well, the point is, if you apologize for it, then you had plenty of time to prepare for it. Don't put it there. Don't make it busy. Just don't. And there's this concept of death by PowerPoint, and I'll put the link to that presentation below. It's a TED talk by a guy called J.P. Phillips. That's his surname. It's called Death by PowerPoint, and it's definitely well worth a watch, where he goes through things that a good presentation, a presentation that keeps people's attention looks like, and the sort of things that shouldn't go onto presentations. And I think the most striking thing there is that if you put those many points onto any presentation, the audience will just want to read through the slide. There's a natural human fear that before he moves on, let me read everything that's on the slide, and it'll take the attention away from you. They will be more focused on the slide itself, and that's not what you want. You don't want people to be looking at the slide or trying to read the slide. They want the attention to be focused on you. And if you do want people, if you have information that actually needs to go on the screen, then control their attention. Control their attention by revealing one thing at a time. So, for example, if you're presenting something which has got 4 or 5 different points in it, then go click by click, reveal one at a time. Patients, workforce, resources, implementation. Why? Because you then decide when they see each idea. They're not trying to read point 4 whilst you're discussing point 1. And think again, do you really need all those words? Just reduce the number of words if you can. So, going back to the email, don't start with the PowerPoint presentation. Think about what is it that you're actually being asked? What do you think about whatever they're asking? And if you don't know much about it, then read up about it. Read up a few different sources, start making some points, and construct what story am I going to tell them. So find the structure first. What pattern are you going to follow? And then make the slides after that. So you need the story embedded in your head before you start making the slides. Let's go through a few examples of questions that have recently been asked. So this presentation topic was, should the Faculty of Intensive Care Medicine become an independent Royal College? Now, there's a very basic, easy approach that I can think of. You can talk about the advantages of this, the disadvantages of this, and conclusion. You don't need 10, 20, 30 slides. It is going to be a 5 to 10 minute talk. It's an icebreaker. You need to reveal your thinking, be smart about it in about 3 or 4 different slides. So on this particular topic, the candidate who got this actually did something better than the structure I was talking about the advantages, disadvantages, conclusions. He started by talking about where we were, i.e., the build-up of intensive care as a specialty, and then talked about how the transition happened during COVID. Talked about the specialty, the training in the specialty, how it's become its own mature identity, and then moved on finally to where we're going with it. And should the professional institution become, as the specialty matures, what does it evolve into? And leave it at that. So you want to be succinct about it. You don't want to put too many words onto the slides. The next topic we move on to was, or is even, the new Royal College of Anaesthetists guidance. Again, another question that got asked in the form of making a presentation about the State of the Nation report by the Royal College of Anaesthetists and what the implications were for the department. Now, the panel, obviously, or at least some people in the panel will know what that document says, or they would have discussed it before you came in. They know the contents of it. You don't need to go through summarizing each and every aspect of the actual report. You want to talk about some of the big changes and give them a brief context. What changes does it propose? And what does it mean for the different aspects? So for patients, never forget patients. People, meaning colleagues, and on the whole, as a service, what does it mean? And then maybe move on to what could stop us following those recommendations by the college, the constraints on workforce, money, capacity, that sort of thing. And then end it by saying to the panel, explaining what is it that you would do first. What will your priorities be when you start off? It's not meant to be that the college says we should do X, therefore we should do X. You put it into the context of the organization, into the context of what you figured out from meeting people before the interviews, and explaining to them how you would personalize these recommendations to that organization. Next example, how should our anesthetic department respond to increasing demand over the next 5 years? Now, you could talk forever about things like how the workforce, how we need more people to work, how the waiting lists are increasing, the population is increasing because of of people living longer. There's obesity, there's complexity, theaters, pre-op assessments, technology, training. You can go on and on and on, but that's just going to bore people, and it's going to really bore people. So I didn't mean that to come up here as people, but what I meant to say was that just pick 3 or 4 headings. You want to talk about people. What effect does it have on the workforce? Briefly talk about that. How does it improve or increase or decrease productivity? What it means to you. Patience, again, don't forget patience. What are your priorities going to be? Don't identify 100 different problems. Decide a few different things that you are going to talk about. And again, talk about those things that you've been involved with in the past, because then you sound a lot more credible. So a few things, 2, 3, maybe 4 things, and prioritize them, talk about them. There are multiple pressures maybe, but say that if you're joining this department, these are the 2 or 3 areas that I would prioritize. And that helps the panel understand how your thinking works. Another legitimate question: what will you bring to this department over the next 5 years? Now, I would make this a bit more personal than generic, because really this question is just about you. Many ways to structure it. You're a clinician, you're a colleague, you believe in change, and in all of these three things, give examples of what you've done well in the past, because that's a good chance to talk about yourself. Also mention why that trust, why you're going to be working in that organization, what has attracted you to that organization, how your interests and skills fit with the organization and the job advertised, and say something on lines of the fact that on day one you'll get a safe, dependable consultant, good colleague, but that's not really my ambition. My ambition is that in 5 years' time, there are things this department does better because you appointed me. I mean, it is about selling yourself. So this is where I want to build a consultant career, and hence I'm here. Now, when should the audience actually look at the slides? Now, the slides should contain information. They think of it more as a prompt sheet for you, but sometimes the slides will need to have some kinds of information. If you do want to put something on it, you think it needs it, then some examples of things that can go on slides are things like a powerful graph or a photograph or one striking statistic. So, for example, that number 2,250 is, I think that's the number of anaesthetists or consultant anaesthetists short in the country from the Royal College of Anaesthetists report, the State of the Nation report. So something like that, where it's cleaned and it just strikes out. It's not busy. Structure the argument, then design the slide. I mean, that is the bottom line. But conversely, what you want to think about is how little can I put on my slide? Now, a few things about the technology to do with making these presentations. You want to keep it as boring as possible when it comes to technology. My suggestion: use PowerPoint. Don't use Keynote. Don't use fancy things like Prezi, things that depend on good internet connectivity. Every NHS organization has Microsoft PowerPoint. Email them the presentation before so that someone in HR or the medical director's office can put that up. It's on the screen when you go in, and you can launch straight into the presentation. Take a PDF backup with you. If all else fails, that PDF backup will help. Take a USB stick if they'll allow you to take one. Maybe even keep something on a copy on your phone, which you can refer to it if you really need to, or turn the phone around or something. That's if they're computers fail, you've got a backup. And I think that comes across in quite good light, that you've come prepared for it. And definitely do not depend on internet connectivity or fancy software. You will have compatibility issues if you use fancy stuff. Anything even as little as Keynote might have compatibility issues. They will not have a MacBook there. So unless you are carrying a converter to an HDMI from your phone and then trying to connect it up, it'll just get silly. Don't even bother. Now, when it comes to the delivery, you don't need every sentence memorized. You just need to know the structure of your presentation, which is why having just 3 or 4 slides is going to be particularly helpful, because then you haven't got a slide deck to remember. You just got 3 or 4 different slides and you know the progression. In terms of giving yourself the best shot, I would memorize the opening, the first 20 to 30 seconds, know exactly how you're starting. So that prevents you from standing there and thinking about, how should I begin? No, that question needs to have been answered ages ago. You go in prepped with the first 20 to 30 seconds of your presentation. You need to know where your transitions are going to be, how one point leads to the other. And finally, know your final message. Just like you would have the first 20 to 30 seconds of the presentation, you also do the same thing with the last 20 to 30 seconds and what the final message is going to be. Because the last thing you want to do is finish with something like, so yeah, that's basically it. No, doesn't come across really well. So deliver the final sentence. It's fine if it comes across as if you've prepped it. It just looks a lot more punchy, and then stop. And finally, timing. If they say 10 minutes, it means 10 minutes. If anything, aim for slightly under. Don't prepare 12 minutes and hope to speak faster. Practice out loud. Do it with a timer. Make sure it ends before your 10-minute timer goes. And thinking it through is not the same as speaking it out aloud. You need to be able to speak it out aloud if you're practicing. If you can be bothered to practice, do it with a timer, do it aloud, maybe even record yourself and play it back. PowerPoint lets you do this. It's got a coach mode where you can go into it, record yourself, talk about it, hear yourself back. So, final take home. When the presentation question arrives, don't begin with what slides should I make. The point here is, what are they actually asking me? What do I think about it? What's my argument? What's my story? What's the simplest structure I can make out of this? How simple can I make my slides? Make it sophisticated, but sophisticated doesn't need to be fancy. It just needs to be prompts for you to be able to speak clearly in front of the panel. And you could use an image, a graph, a number, 3, 4, 5 words, one phrase, one sentence, not a lot at all on the slide. Definitely not. That's the end of this presentation in terms of tips on how to make a presentation. Do go and listen to the TED Talk by JP Phillips on Death by PowerPoint. It's extremely useful, and I recommend it to a lot of people before they're going up to the stage to speak about anything. So if you're preparing for a consultant interview, do subscribe to Beyond CCT. Tell your friends about it. Tell your colleagues about it. I will talk about more real questions that get asked in interviews. Things like these on presentations, NHS issues, and things you need to learn about in your transition from being a registrar to a consultant. And please, as I've said before, any likes, subscribes, and follows will be really, really useful. I'll end it by saying, if you had any fancy presentation topics that you actually been given at a consultant interview, put it in the comments, and it could actually be quite helpful to your colleagues. And I will try and make some future episodes on those topics. And if you can leave your name and email address, I'll personally drop you an email and get in touch. And thank you for that. Hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.